Welcome to Science 7. This is Lesson 12 in our first unit on ecology. And today we are going to talk about land use and habitat loss. So how do humans impact natural communities? The biggest thing that humans do to impact natural communities in the ecosystems are land use and habitat loss. Farming, building cities, logging can all change the conditions that are needed for other organisms to survive. And it's very, very difficult to balance both the needs and the wants of humans and our ecosystems. And this is where that living in balance comes in, and living in harmony with our ecosystems that we're not very good at, and that the native and Aboriginal peoples can help us with. Canadians have a very high standard of living, which means that we expect a lot. We like our electronics, we like our big cars, we like our fancy houses. And so as a result, we have a much greater effect on our land use and habitat loss than those countries that are poorer, or third world countries that have lower standards of living. The amount of resources that we use has an impact on the environment. It's called our ecological footprint. Now, the primary threat to the world's biodiversity is habitat destruction and the elimination of the living conditions needed for plants and animals to survive. Some types of habitat destruction are forests converted to agriculture and livestock production, development along the coastlines and the conversion of estuaries, bogs, and swamps to landfills, dumps, and residential areas. And this can lead to the extinction of species, therefore a reduction of biodiversity. In BC, the coastal areas are faced with logging of forests, the northern boreal forest with gas and oil exploration, the southern interior with agriculture expansion, and the Georgia Basin with housing and urban development. Plants and animals that live in these places often cannot exist in these altered ecosystems, and so they die off, or in the case of animals, they may move somewhere else, all of which lowers our biodiversity. Animals that migrate are threatened by habitat loss and then return to an altered feeding or nesting area. So animals that may nest in one area in the spring and summer and leave for the winter and then come back the following year to find that their nesting areas have been completely altered or destroyed by human activities. Land use issues are difficult because they often involve opposing interests. And what that means is that the interests of the ecologist is often different from the scientist, which is different from the business people. So it's very, very hard to balance everything that humans want and need. The other thing that causes a reduction in biodiversity is the introduction of non-native species. So this non-native species are any organism living outside their natural range, and they can destroy and harm native species because they compete with them for resources or hunt them for food. Many non-native species are so common to us that we don't realize that they are not naturally occurring. A good example of this is the honeybee, which is not native to BC. The idea of non-native species could be linked to limiting factors. In many instances, the limiting factors for the non-native species are not present in its newfound home, so it is able to reproduce and increase in population. Invasive exotic plants can lead to decreased biodiversity. As native plants are choked out, the food, soil, quality, shade, and shelter change, as do wind and water movements. Exotic pests, such as black garden slugs and plant disease, increase. Crop yields decrease to an estimated 50 million annually in BC due to non-native species and pests. Invasive plants are spreading into Surrey's natural areas from residential gardens and from dump yard waste. Surrey operates a free pickup of yard waste every year, so this shouldn't be happening. Plants and animals in both land and aquatic ecosystems are affected by non-native species in terms of disrupting the food chain and invading their niches. Non-native species also travel in ballast water, taken on by ships for stability and then dumped into harbors across the globe. The American government is making laws to help stop the spread of non-native species from ballast water, mainly in the Great Lakes area. Canada has yet to make any laws in this regard, but asks ships to dump ballast water in the ocean rather than the Great Lakes and canals. An example of a non-native species that has come to Canada from ballast is the mosquito. The mosquito is not native to Canada, and it came across the water from Japan in their ballast tanks. An example of this would be a frog that was introduced into the lake in Victoria, which then started eating smaller frogs. It started eating the ducks, eggs, and small chicks, and almost completely destroyed the natural ecosystem there. And non-native species are often introduced into areas through human behavior. For example, turtles, red-eared slider turtles that are kept as pets and then no longer wanted, and they get dumped into the nearest lake. All of these animals that do not belong in that natural range has a detrimental effect on the natural ecosystem there and can disrupt the food chains and food webs in that area. All right, so it's not very much in this one. We will talk more about this in class, and I'll see you next time.